There is no question we are at war once again, and this first phase is to take out Gaddafi's air defenses.
The ship-launched missiles were fired from some 500 miles away in the Mediterranean Sea.
Born and raised in a poor Libyan desert during colonialism, Mummar Qaddafi became a charismatic man of the people. Realizing that education will play an important role in developing the Libyan country, he went to study graduate school and attained his university degree. As an Arab nationalist, he joined the Libyan army to defend his country after it gained independence. With hard work and dedication, he quickly rose through the ranks in the military. Gaddafi waited until the king went abroad for treatment to overthrow him and take control of the country. He made many enemies, both in Libya and abroad. He opposed Zionism and Israel's apartheid system on the Palestinian people. The Western countries were extracting oil and paying pennies on a dollar for it. And so, under his rule, he opposed the exploitation of his country by the West and their allies. Libya had the fastest growing economy in Africa. Even though Gaddafi was a dictator, he worked hard for his people and ensured the economic development of his country and people. You would think that the Libyans were happy, right? Right? Well, they were happy. That is until the Arab Spring, which led the Libyans to demand that he step down from power, and this led to the killing of Gaddafi and the ultimate demise of Libya and its people. This is the rise and fall of Mummar Qaddafi. Gaddafi was born on June 7, 1942, in Sirte, Libya. Raised in a Bedouin tent in the Libyan desert, no one would have predicted that he would be as rich and influential as he would become in his later years. At the time of his birth, Libya was an Italian colony. In 1951, Libya gained independence under the Western allied King Idris. Prior to its independence in 1951, the territory comprising of present-day Libya had been a semi-independent province of the Ottoman Empire from 1711 to 1835, an Italian colony from 1912 to 1947, and was under British and French occupation from 1943 to 1951. So as you can see, Libya has been through a series of takeovers by outside forces. As a young man, Gaddafi was influenced by the Arab nationalist movement and admired Egyptian leader Gamal Abdel Nasser. In 1961, Gaddafi entered the military college in the city of Benghazi. He also spent 4 months receiving military training in the United Kingdom. After graduating, Gaddafi steadily rose through the ranks of the military. As disaffection with King Idris grew, Gaddafi became involved with a movement of young officers to overthrow the king. A talented and charismatic man, Gaddafi rose to power in the group. On September 1st, 1969, King Idris was overthrown while he was abroad in Turkey for medical treatment. He was named Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and Chairman of the Revolutionary Command Council, Libya's new ruling body. At age 27, he had become the ruler of Libya. Young Gaddafi saw the exploitation of his country by the West, and he promised to solve the problem once and for all. When Gaddafi took power, there was a lot of military bases belonging to the Americans and the British. He wanted complete control of his country, and so he decided to shut down their military bases in Libya. In addition, there were American and British oil companies extracting oil in Libya, and they paid very little of the share to the government. The people of Libya were being exploited and robbed of their resources for dirt cheap. And so, Gaddafi demanded that oil companies share a bigger portion of the oil and revenue with the government. He even nationalized some of the oil companies. As a devout Muslim, he implemented some Islamic laws and principles into Libyan law. He replaced the Gregorian calendar with the Islamic one, forbade the sale of alcohol, and made gambling illegal. Gaddafi knows that Libya was still controlled by foreign forces and former colonies. In 1970, he expelled the remaining Italians from Libya and emphasized what he saw as the battle between Arab nationalism and Western imperialism. He vocally opposed Zionism and Israel and expelled the Jewish community from Libya. Now that he has expelled the foreign forces and powers from his country, he was on top of the world and on track to make Libya the best and most advanced country in Africa. Since Gaddafi took power, oil has been the main resource in the hands of the leader of the new Libyan Arab Republic. The triumph of the 1969 revolution marked a paradigm shift, moving the new government to use its oil income to boost redistributive measures among the population, generating a new model of economic and social development for the country. Nationalizing the foreign oil companies helped him provide a more socialist government to help his country. He was putting the interests of local labor above foreign capital. Throughout Gaddafi's rule, ambitious social programs were launched in the areas of education, health, housing, public works, and subsidies for electricity and basic foodstuffs. These policies led to a substantial improvement in the living conditions of the Libyans, from being one of the poorest countries in Africa in 1969 to being the continent's leader in its Human Development Index in 2011. As a result, the United Nations Development Programme in 2010 considered Libya a high development country in the Middle East and North Africa. At the international level, Pan-Arabism should be highlighted, with the confrontation opened to the United States due to the opposition that Gaddafi exerted on the influence of this country, reaching closer ties with other Arab countries to carry out common policies of rejection of Washington's policies of the Middle East and Africa. The Libyan leader worked to strengthen ties with neighboring countries such as Egypt, Morocco, Syria, Tunisia, Chad, and many other countries, as well as maintaining close relations with countries like France and Russia. Gaddafi also connected with Latin American countries such as Venezuela and Cuba, which led him to cultivate an extensive network of contacts, an uncomfortable influence for Europe and the US. Education and healthcare were free for all in Libya. In contrast, in the USA, about 15% of the population have student debt. By 2011, Libya had the highest GDP per capita and life expectancy on the African continent. Fewer people lived below the poverty line in Libya than in the Netherlands, an outstanding achievement. However, this was just the rosy part. Gaddafi had his problems. In December 1969, there was a failed coup attempt. As a result, he criminalizes political dissent. Gaddafi had appointed himself or close family and friends to most positions of power. There were very little political freedoms for his opponents, and there were reports of human rights violations being committed. However, the war crimes reported by the Western media was grossly exaggerated. The Western media called his regime oppressive, falsely accused him of supporting numerous terrorist groups and their bombings with very little to no evidence. In reality, the Western countries didn't like him because he wanted to abandon the US dollar and introduce a currency for Libya and Africa at large. This proposed currency was called the gold dinar, and he didn't give the West access to his country's oil. This made the Western countries hate him and want to see his downfall. Little did Gaddafi know that the Arab Spring is at the corner, and this will give the Western countries the chance that they were waiting for, to punish him for all the anger he had caused them, leading to his downfall, and that of Libya once and for all. After more than 4 decades in power, Gaddafi's downfall happened in less than a year. In January 2011, the Tunisian revolution forced out longtime dictator Zain al-Abidine bin Ali and set off the Arab Spring. The next month, Egyptian ruler Hosni Mubarak was forced out, providing a moral boost to protesters in several Arab capitals. Despite the atmosphere of severe repression, demonstrations broke out of the city of Benghazi and spread throughout Libya. Gaddafi used aggressive force to try to suppress the protest, and the violence quickly escalated. Police and soldiers were brought in, and some of them shot at protesters. The casualties mounted. Libyans grew more determined to see the downfall of Gaddafi. As violence spread through the country, Gaddafi made several speeches on television, claiming that the demonstrators were traitors, foreigners, Al-Qaeda, and drug addicts.
If you say they do love you, then why are they capturing Benghazi and they say they're against you there? Why are they in Zawiya?
It is a guide. It is guide, not my people. It is guide. Guide, yes.
Colonel Gaddafi, the President of the United States, the leaders of Britain and other leaders are calling on you to step down, to leave Libya, to leave your position of power. Will you do that?
Who would leave his homeland?
Today, no let up in a defiance, this time of his own people.
If I was the president, I would throw my resignation in your faces, in the faces of these insects. But I don't have a position. I have nothing but my gun, and I will fight to the last drop of my blood, and with the Libyan people behind me. Get out of your homes and attack the rats in their dens.
He urged his supporters to continue the fight, and small groups of heavily armed loyalists battled out against the rebels. By February 2011, the opposition had gained control over much of the country, and some soldiers joined the rebel groups. The rebels surrounded Tripoli, where Gaddafi still had some support. Most of the Western countries expressed support for the rebels and called for the ousting of Gaddafi. At the end of March, a NATO coalition began to provide support for the rebel forces in the form of airstrikes and a no-fly zone. NATO's military intervention over the next 6 months proved to be decisive. In April, a NATO attack killed one of Gaddafi's sons. When Tripoli fell to the rebels in late August, it was seen as a major victory for the opposition and a symbolic end of Gaddafi's rule. In June 2011, the International Criminal Court, known for its bias against Africa and the Middle East, issued arrest warrants for the arrest of Gaddafi and his son, Saif al-Islam, and his brother-in-law for crimes against humanity. On October 20th, 2011, Libyan officials announced that Gaddafi had died near his hometown of Sirte, Libya. As news of the former dictator's death spread, Libyans poured into the streets, celebrating what many has hailed as the culmination of their revolution. Post Gaddafi, Libya has continued to be embroiled in violence, with state authority eventually being held by the General National Congress. Various militia groups have vied for power. Dozens of political figures and activists in Benghazi have been killed, with many having to leave the area. The country has also seen a succession of interim prime ministers. Years after his death, residents in the chaos-wrecked country's capital of Tripoli have grown to miss the longtime leader as the frustrations of daily life mount. The economically and socially stable Libya under Gaddafi versus a fragmented country without a government, devastated by attacks, bombings, and continuous clashes, is the result of the NATO invasion in 2011, a conclusion that many regret supporting almost a decade later. So, the West got what they wanted. They assisted in the dethrone of Gaddafi and destabilized the Libyan country and economy. The Western countries can now get what they wanted all along: Libya's oil.